This is the Go Podcast. Welcome back, listeners, to the GOAT podcast. Don't worry, it's not only myself, Jack Lacey. Tom is still with me, but the reason I'm kicking off the show this week is because we're tackling my club on this episode, my beloved Newcastle United, and I've got a fellow fully paid up member of the Toon Army as our guest on the show. But first off, Tom, how are you this week, mate?
Not too bad, mate, and I think we've obviously been waiting to cover your club as well, and I'm really excited, to be honest, to cover them, because I think we were speaking a little bit off air just about them before, and there is a real breadth, I think, of time that we can look at for Newcastle. Certainly them great FA Cup years, going back to the 50s, for example, right through to the Keegan years and the Robson years after that. So I think there's obviously a real breadth, and just for you two as well. Obviously, growing up in this bit of a strange era for you, but I think you did catch the back end of them great years under Robson as well. So I think it'll be really, really interesting to dive into, yeah.
Yeah, no, I've been absolutely itching to get to my club, mate, as I'm sure you will with Liverpool as well, which is perhaps why they've come up so quickly in the series. But anyway, our guest this week is a close friend of mine, Jack Simpson, who I've had many a pre- and post-game pint with down the last few years. He's been a season ticket holder for much of the past decade, and we were both at university together in the city over the last few years, and we're flatmates actually during the championship winning season of 2017. So, I mean, I'm not putting it down to the fact that's why we were successful that year. But yeah, anyway, how are you, Simps? Welcome to the GOAT podcast.
Hey, thanks for having us. Nice to take a nice trip down memory lane there, going through championship seasons that we've had together.
It needs to be done at the moment because the current football we're watching is it's pretty hard. It's pretty hard to digest. But I suppose just
what you like about Mike Ashley, but he's given us 2 league titles. I'll be in the championship.
He brought back the glory years, yeah, absolutely.
I'm waiting for like a sort of like anti-Newcastle rival fan to throw that up as a serious argument. Like, he's giving you 2 titles. What can you be upset about?
What more do you want?
We'll come to your GOAT choices in a minute, Simps. But first of all, let's get your current thoughts really on what do you make of the situation this season. Obviously, still no takeover. Steve Bruce still in charge despite a pretty terrible run of form, and once again we're in a relegation dogfight, which I think I've counted. It seems to be like the 5th serious dogfight we've had in the past decade alone, really, or just over. So yeah, what are your current thoughts on this season?
Yeah, I mean, frustrating. Frustrating a lot of ways as well, because I think a lot of people kind of feel a bit sort of vindicated by Steve Bruce kept coming in, and a lot of people sort of said this just isn't going to end well. Wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, and yeah, now we're playing some struggling times, but. If anything, the season for me is kind of epitomed sort of being a Newcastle fan for the last, however many years that'll be now, where we're kind of on the edge of potentially being able to do something positive, but then also the brink of disaster. Start of the season, we spent some decent amount of money, good players as well. Callum Wilson for 20 million, I think, is actually one of the best bits of business we've done in a long time.
Definitely.
And you're thinking maybe this is the chance for us to kick on. Bruce maybe not be the best tactically as a manager, but the players are there alongside Miguel Almiron and Alan Saint-Maximin. But then, lo and behold, the season's just going pear-shaped. And even at the start of the year, it looked like we might start turning the corner. But we're now starting to do that awkward dance of looking over our shoulders rather than looking ahead in the table of where we can maybe overtake. It's actually, are there 3 worse teams in the league than us? And I hate doing that as a fan. As a football fan, I want to be excited by what's happening at the club and where we're going. But now I'm more just concerned that can we even just stay in the league at the minute, which is never where you want to be.
it feels like a really avoidable one this year, and like I completely agree. It's almost like there's a few hallmarks of relegation campaigns gone past where it's like some games, particularly over the past few weeks, we're playing a lot better than we were earlier on in the season, but we're still not getting results, and it's just it's just going to catch up with us, I think, at some point down the line.
But even just for this season, like when we've been quite a negative team this season, and a lot of that can go down to quality, and that might be fair enough on some of the parts. But when you look at some of the quite positive football we've played this season, and we've done it really well. We've actually taken the games to a few teams, and like you say, Lace, unlucky to come away without any points in them. But then you then think back to games against like Sheffield United, where we've given them one of two wins this season, and we set up negatively. We set up so defensively that we were like settling for a draw away at Bramall Lane against a team that at the time hadn't won until we played them. And you're just thinking, if we played them in the system we're playing now, where we're trying to actually have a go at teams, what could be different? So we're kind of just more, rather than the team itself just not being that good, it's I think we're a bit more victims of our own downfall. In that sense, a nice cheery start of this conversation.
Don't worry.
Well, I was thinking it was quite funny before, but just before we came on air, because we were just going through. It's obviously a year to the day now since your last game at St James's Park, I believe, or at least watching Newcastle. And I think we were recounting what that was like, and I think there was a sequence of 3 draws that you went through. Up to the point of lockdown.
3-0 nils with the last
3-0
3
draws.
games at St James's, which I mean, I actually wasn't able to make those games. The last game I saw was us getting beaten 3-0 at home by Leicester on New Year's Day, which wasn't much better, definitely a lot worse. It's not been the most positive start to this episode, Sims, but we're gonna. I think by that,
it's funny bit though, just because the last 2 years have just kind of been a one of luck, I think, as a Newcastle fan, and last season it kind of worked out for us, in a way where the 2-0 against Everton, and we scored 2 goals in the 95th and 96th at extra time. We beat Chelsea with the last minute Hatem winner when I think it was our first shot on target or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of luck involved in Newcastle in the last 2 years, and that's where a lot of the frustration comes from. I don't want to be one of these fans that just constantly harks back to Rafa, but at least with Rafa, I feel like you could always see a plan. And there was always, like, even though we set up defensively, there was a counter-attack, and the counter-attacks looked promising. Whereas now, it just kind of looks a lot more like just hit it to St. Maximin, hit it to Miguel Almiron, and just hope something happens. Which I think is kind of where that luck's running out for us this season, and actually a lot of those things where we may have snuck a win or snuck a draw, we're just losing.
Yeah, I completely agree. You're right, the Everton game, the Chelsea game, we had a few games last season where late goals made a massive difference to the overall swing of the campaign, and just whenever we needed a result last year, we got it, but I think that just seems to have deserted Bruce this season. Which I'm sure we'll talk about more as we go on. But anyway, let's focus on the positives, and I'm going to come to you in a sec, Tom, for your thoughts on this as well. But let's start off, Simps, with your selection for your greatest Newcastle United player.
Yeah, so if we're looking at it greatest, I've been to and fro this in my mind just like all week. I think if you're looking at greatest, you just can't get away from Alan Shearer.
Yeah.
Growing up as a kid, as a Newcastle fan, you would go to games. There was just a guarantee that Shearer would score. It was like you were just going expecting that to happen. And obviously he's gone on. He's broken the records, and they all speak for themselves. It's pointless even trying to talk about it, because everyone just knows Shearer and everyone knows what he did and what he does. Yeah. But for me, in terms of greatest footballing ability that I've seen, and that when I went to a match, I was like, I am just excited to see this one player. For me, it's Hatem Ben Arfa. And I think that's, again, I think it's hard to, like, now I've just said it out loud, it's just like, I'm now stuck. Shearer, I think, Shearer's the greatest player, undoubtedly, but my favourite player that I think would be Ben Arfa, and I think in a lot of respects he's one of the greatest footballers that I've seen with a football at his feet. He had his own downfalls, which is fine, and which is why you'll never be like an all-time great or anything like that, and never would have been to the extent of Shearer. But you used to watch Ben Arfa and the things he could do with the football. I mean, on his debut, he scored from about 40 yards out against Everton, and I remember that. I'm just thinking like, he's doing that on his debut. Like this lad's got confidence. He's going to do something. He would unfortunately, break his leg in a couple of games' time, but when he came back, and he used to just tear defenses. Like, I was thinking, when you watch those like cheesy football films, and someone does like one step over, and the defender will just like fall on the floor, and like you run through on goal.
I was going to say, why do I get a feeling that goal's already come up 10
They'll
minutes
do
after
no skill whatsoever. They'll do the tiniest bit of skill, and all of a sudden they're like on the floor, sliding all over the defender. But Ben Arfa was that, but in real life, and like actually good at it. Like, he used to take on defenders, and just they'd be like scrambling to stay up, sort of thing. They wouldn't even know what's coming past them. The classic.
I can't get that out of my head now with like from goal with like was it Lauren Robert's goal just got like replaced by Nunes.
I never know why players nowadays, players of like the current generation, all reference goal as like a reason why they knew Newcastle.
Callum Wilson said one in an interview just the other day. It was one of my reasons I joined Newcastle.
I never knew at the time the goal's impact was that significant, because I think even amongst Newcastle fans, I don't think it was that. It wasn't. I
thought the sequel was disappointing.
Yeah,
if anything.
Well,
I thought the first one was good.
It's never a good move if you leave Newcastle for Real Madrid.
There was a tweet as well recently, because some guy actually called Santiago Munez from Mexico had been called up to the national team or something like that, and Newcastle United had tweeted it like with the eyes emoji, which is like got loads of people loving it.
But
I'll never see the likes of Santiago Munez again.
I do know what you mean though, just about Ben Arfa, because he did have that sort of like, in terms of being, I wouldn't say he had a career that made him a definite greatest, but I agree. But I think he's an interesting name for you to bring up, because at his peak, I agree that I don't think I've seen many better players, more talented footballers, certainly for Newcastle. I can't remember that many. I think
he's certainly as well. Like, thinking of when he came into the team as well, we kind of had Joey Barton and Gutierrez, who were much more just like industrious wingers. They not really like skillful players, not really explosive players, really good at getting the ball in, really good work rate on them, sort of thing. So Ben Arfa came in, and you just never seen a player like him, at least in my lifetime of supporting Newcastle. So it was just like this unbelievable guy doing like FIFA Street style skills against players, and the amount of times you'd watch him take like a centre back, a full back, and a midfielder into a corner, 3-on-1 situation. And he would still just come out with the ball and be dinking it in for Demba Ba or whoever it might be. And he's just thinking, how on earth has he done that? You scratch your head sometimes watching him thinking, how on earth has he actually like just done that? And then he's got a catalogue of goals which are all just completely different. 30-yard screamers, ones when he takes on about 5 different players and just puts it himself.
The Bolton one is always my favourite. The one where he picks it up on the halfway line, and because he picks it up with his back to goal in his own half, and that's just like not a dangerous position for a player to be on the pitch to score. Like you imagine picking the ball in your own half, just not far from the centre spot, and he I think instantly does a turn that puts him facing goal and just like sits down a couple of Bolton defenders.
I think that is definitely magical. As well. Like, that's definitely as well like the Hollywood goal as well, where like the defenders are flying in and just missing him. And like they're like taking each other out or running into each other. Like one guy's got his bootlaces tied together or something like that. But just thinking about that kind of caliber of like goals, it's a really special kind of player in Ben Arfa that does that, and it's something I just haven't really seen.
So much talent again. Yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, he kind of shoots himself in the foot at one point when he starts talking about the Ballon d'Or, and it's like, okay, let's rein that bit in a bit. But certainly, I thought he could definitely get into sort of top 4 English team sides and wouldn't look out of place if played properly.
Yeah.
I mean, he came through in that era, didn't he, with like Nasri and Benzema. You know, he was that kind of age range, wasn't he? And I feel there was a point in time where he was probably the best talent, if you like, out of that group. And it always fascinated with me that he didn't maybe go on and out. I know he ended up playing for PSG, for example. I think he played for Marseille early on, didn't he? But he didn't quite have the career that possibly he should have done. Even when he was at PSG, he didn't really play as much and that sort of thing. How good you think he could have been just on what you've watched from him if he was consistent week in week out for 38 game season?
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird one when you think about what there'll always be question marks about what happened between him and Pardew. Like, all of a sudden, it just seems like they finished the season. Ben Arfa's had a really good season, and then he'll come back at pre-season and Pardew will say he's overweight. He'll say no, he's fit and ready to go again, and all of a sudden he's on loan at Hull for 6 months, and that's kind of the end of his Newcastle career. So it's really weird in terms of how that ends, but it kind of felt like the sky was the limit with him, and it was. I remember thinking at some point we're gonna lose him. He's Man United or something like that are going to come in for him. I kind of accepted our status as a feeder club then because we'd lost some other key assets as well. Yeah. So it's kind of like right, okay, well they've taken these players. Ben Arfa surely the next on the list, but it all just seems to go wrong one summer. And I'm not sure what it is, but in terms of where he could have gone, yeah, definitely wouldn't have looked at. I think out of place in the sort of Champions League sort of eras, and probably a shame he didn't get much more of a French national career as well. Whether that is just because he's playing for Newcastle United rather than Manchester United, not 100%, but definitely wouldn't have looked out of place in the top four. I would have thought.
Yeah, I often think, I know it's just one season, so I try and refrain from bringing it up all the time. But the season we did finish fifth, people forget we lost the last 2 games of that season, and we actually lost 3 of the last 4. If we'd have won any of those games we lost, we'd have finished in the top 4 and been in the Champions League ourselves. And I often think
proper sliding doors.
It really was, Tom. Yeah, I think like for a lot of things could have. And apparently Mike Ashley, hilariously was genuinely angered that we didn't get in the top 4 that year, just because we had such a good opportunity to, even though no one expected us to at the start of the season. But my point was going to be on Ben Arfa, that I think how much of one player, how much has he done improved the team on his own? To be fair, I think there was Cabaye in that team as well. I think Cabaye and Ben Arfa together took a team that was like a mid-table team, and with those two in the side, they suddenly became like a top 4 challenging team. And Demba Ba and Cisse were magnificent in front of goal that year as well. But I think whenever we missed Ben Arfa or Cabaye, whenever you took either Ben Arfa or Yohan Cabaye out of that team, suddenly it was like it was where you'd expect us to be, really mid-table sort of outfit. So had we have got in the Champions League, I wonder would Ben Arfa's reputation been catapulted into like the stratosphere amongst Newcastle fans, like. But I guess we'll never know now. But it's an interesting
that's
choice.
The most.
Just on the sliding doors thing as well. How different do you think it would have been that 10-year block that we've had now since then? If you'd have got in that Champions League that season, being able to keep hold of maybe one of, Ben Arfa or Cabaye, for example, because they were the standout players and obviously the forward line as well. If you're able to even add to that. I know Pardew was there at the time under a big contract, but how far do you think you could have taken it?
It's strange because then on the back of that season where we get into Europe for like the first time in however long, we'd always kept the same 11. It was the reason we did so well that season was that we had 11 core players that were all really good at what they did and they never got injured. We were just able to name the same 11 week in, week out, really. And we signed Papi Stemba Cisse in the January, and he sort of bolsters those ranks. But we then get to that summer, and it's really weird. We get into Europe for the first time. We just have this like core 11 squad, but then we only really signed Vernon Anita from Ajax. I think it was that year.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like this just isn't going to be enough. And whether you think, okay, maybe if we got into the Champions League with that kind of money, resource, and maybe even ambition, would we have gone harder in the transfer market to get more quality players in to strengthen that outfit, strengthen that squad? kick us onto a gear, and not to the extent that we would have been a consistent top 4 team, but it would that European season would kind of be a blessing and a curse, because we would then finish by 15th the next season and never really trouble top 10 again after that.
I think it's the thing of, it's not that you necessarily, obviously I'm not saying if Newcastle had finished top 4 that year they would have become a regular top 4 club for the next 5 years, because I just don't think that's what would have happened. But it's about how it sets you up for like the whole future of your club, the way you can invest in the club going forward. So like, I think Leicester City are a great example of, they won the Premier League, but I think what was important about that was got them into the Champions League, and they sort of used it to stabilise them as a top 8 club and a top 6 club now. And now they're going again, aren't they? Now they're pushing on again to get back into the top 4, and it's like, it's good to see, to be fair, as a neutral. And I think that's where we could have been if we'd have come top 4 that season. But equally, I was never expecting us to be anywhere near it, and then we somehow were on the final day of the season and we still could have snuck it, still could have finished 3rd. It's like, it's ridiculous to think of now.
Yeah.
And that's the weird thing about that season as well. Like, if you go back to before we finished 5th, we signed Cabaye, and he's just won the French league, but no one's really heard of him. He's not like a top continental name.
No, he's pretty unheard of.
Same with Ben Arfa. He's not a top continental name or anything. Like, people might have heard of him by Football Manager or something, but it's not like he's these big hot talents, and all of a sudden they come in and they're these world beaters that we've just unearthed.
I remember a lot of
they
people
kind of set the tone, I think.
I remember a lot of people being upset that we'd sold Kevin Nolan to West Ham, and then like, who are we going to get in as replacement? And his actual replacement was Cabaye. And it's like, I mean, I love Kevin Nolan and what he did. He was a good servant for Newcastle, but I don't think he'd admit he's not a patch on the player that Yohan Cabaye was. I think that's fair to say.
He's not putting a free kick in against Man United.
Well, no, there you go, not from 30 yards. But, I mean, I feel like we've come around the houses a bit here, but just to bring it back to your choice, Simps, would you still, if you were pressed, would you still say Shearer as your ultimate choice, or would you go Ben Arfa?
I think ultimate choice, you have to say Shearer.
Shearer's had to be,
the greatest player. I think if you put him in today's squad, if you put like a prime Shearer in today's Newcastle squad, he changes it probably more than today's Ben Arfa.
Definitely.
And I think you could, and a prime Shearer gets in any Premier League squad today probably as well. It's just one of those just freak of nature players, once in a generational players that we were fortunate enough to have. And he's going to inspire however many kids to be playing football and whatnot. But yeah, Shearer was just such a unbelievable striker,
phenomenal
complete
player.
striker.
Yeah, I actually,
everything about him going.
I don't want to repeat myself, Tom, because I think if we go back to our first series, I nominated him for the greatest Premier League, the Premier League GOAT. So, but one of the things I might have raised in that episode, but I always think gets overlooked with Shearer. I'm not saying he's underrated, but I think what is underrated is people often, or overlooked, should I say, is that people forget the career-threatening injuries that he had. Like, he had two injuries that could have easily ended a career. One at Blackburn and one at Newcastle. And to still have the goal record he does after those two injuries, that's what I think people need to recognise. Like, it gets easily forgotten. So yeah, Simps, I'd say that's a great selection.
And then you also get those just subjective things, don't you, outside of football, where he's the captain, he's the captain, he's the leader, he's like the face of Newcastle for 10 years or so, really, isn't he? Where when you think of Newcastle, you think of Shearer, and he's one of the biggest celebrities in football, and he's at your club, sort of thing. Ben Arfa never had that pulling power, sort of thing. So I'm trying not. Yeah. It sounds weird. 'Cause I'm not trying to compare Shearer and Ben Arfa and say these two on the same platform. But with the football, I would still say I think Ben Arfa is just one of the most gifted players I've ever seen. Whereas
is that because you associate it with that year? Would you say? Where obviously you nearly go on and make the top 4, but also the enjoyment that you had of that year of all them great players. That some of them did obviously move on. But I think you've definitely seen the best of Ben Arfa, I think, probably at Newcastle in that season, where I'd agree, in certain games he was unplayable. And, like you say, the Everton goal on, I think you said his debut. I remember that goal, and that was phenomenal. The goal where he ran from deep, it just gets people off the seats, doesn't it? And I think we often remember players like that, I think, a bit more readily even than a player who was a bit more consistent over 4 or 5 years, say, but maybe didn't get people off the seats quite as much. I think sometimes it's the same at Liverpool. Sometimes we remember players who had that one great season, probably more than a player who had 3 or 4 okay seasons, sort of thing. I think it's just the nature of being a football fan. So I was just wondering whether you kind of thought that was the case with him. That he's that kind of player who sticks in your mind for that 1 year sort of thing, and it's crystallised in your memory sort of thing.
I mean, you're kind of right there, and I'll probably come on to this a bit later. But that whole 5th season was just like a huge. I would, as good as I love that season, it was just like we just struck gold that season, and every player we had sort of just managed to complement each other perfectly out of sort of seemingly nowhere. And I think when you think about that defence, like Colaccini and Williamson, they were like the best defence in Europe come December. And this is a defender we'd picked from the Championship, Portsmouth sort of thing. So like that whole season is just everyone sort of got the best out of each other without necessarily being the best players in the Premier League. And Ben Arfa was no exception. When he's got Demba Ba in front of him and he's got Kabay as the centre mid next to him as well. It does become a lot easier. But I still think if you brought Ben Arfa back, and if Ben Arfa had a 5-year career at Newcastle, you'd be having such a praise and all-inspiring conversation about him and thinking like this is one of the best wingers we've ever had at the club. Again, but I'm not going to say that he was ever going to be any better than or any greater than Alan Shearer at the club.
No, I think that's, to be fair, mate, I think a lot of Newcastle fans would agree with you, definitely. I think it's a solid choice and perhaps an obvious choice, but a fantastic choice nonetheless as your greatest Newcastle player. I mean, you've touched a little bit on sort of your love for Ben Arfa as well, but I guess we should move on now to your selection for your own cult hero, and we've done a few of these episodes now, and like guests have interpreted the phrase cult hero in their own way, sort of thing. So I'm interested to see what road you've gone down with it, Sim. So yeah, do you want to give us your cult hero? Yeah,
sure. I mean, there's a lot of honourable mentions to be said here with Newcastle United. I always quite like I love it as a club because our cult heroes are just these random players that you'll never hear of again, sort of thing. And the epitome of that one, who's not a cult hero, but I think I just want to mention him was just Daryl Murphy when we got relegated to the Championship. Brought him in for a season, and it was a perfect marriage because he was an experienced striker at the Championship.
Yeah, we
wanted to get out of the Championship.
One of Rafa's smartest signings, that definitely.
Yeah, he came in, scored some like really important goals, got a whole chant about him, and then just sort of left the following summer and just kind of like, cheers.
Never played the Premier League.
He's ruthless, isn't he, Rafa? He's absolutely ruthless, Rafa. He'll just have you in for one season and then...
As much as I agree with Rafa's decision on that, Tom, part of me really wanted to see how Daryl Murphy would have done for one Premier League game. Give him 10 minutes, like for the effort and the service he gave to us in the Championship. It's the same with David Kelly and the 92 Championship winning team. It's like, just give these players have done so much for you to get you to the Premier League. Give them 10 minutes when you're there.
Yeah, it's just it was just very much. It wasn't even like we couldn't get rid of him. It was like literally like right at the start of the summer that we got promoted. It was like see you later. Like cheers for you. And I think he gave an interview kind of saying like, yeah, this was what it was sort of thing. I knew what I was there for. Rafa knew what I was there for, and that was just a happy marriage, really. But he was a good player and got some important goals for us. Another honourable mention I'll give to James Perch. I think if you were just a manager, he's just
he did a job.
Could play him in any position, and he'll just give you 100%. You'll not really look too out of place, and scored one of the best own goals I've ever seen against Stoke, where like. The corner comes in against Kenwyne Jones, and just Page comes out of nowhere and just diving header.
That was a great.
Smacks into the back of the net.
I wasn't laughing at the time, but it was. Looking back on it, it was. It was an unbelievable, a stonker of an own goal.
It was even like, I think Cameron Jones was really going to get like a clear shot on goal, but it was just the fact that he just popped out of nowhere.
Cleared his lines, yeah. Straight into the back of the net.
What
yeah,
I loved about James Perch was that he had those we signed him when we got promoted back to the Premier League, and his first 5 games he got a yellow card in every single game to pick up a 1-match ban, which I don't think anyone else in the Premier League had done. Been booked on every one of their first 5 games.
I reckon that Kabak's on his way for Liverpool.
To be fair,
that Kabak, to be fair. I don't want to get onto him too much because you know my feelings on him at the minute. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Page probably endeared himself to the crowd, and everyone kind of saw him as just the workhorse that he was. Not the best player, never going to be a top player, and probably Newcastle would end up ever being his level if ever he was going to get transferred, he'd be down. But I think people always loved Page. My final honourable mention though as well, just because he's probably my first cult hero and my first introduction to cult culture, but just Nobby Solano. I mean, Peruvian
good
winger, playing in the Premier League. Stories about him waking up hotels with trumpets and everything. Like, you just kind of love that kind of character.
Love Nobby.
So, but
really good player as well. Solano, really good player as well. Solano,
top class player. I mean, he was like he had 2 spells with us, but and people sometimes remember. I think some fans from other clubs remember his second spell at Newcastle more, but he was part of the team that finished 4th and the team that finished 3rd, and over back-to-back years, and he was like a really key part of that Bobby Robson team.
Scores one of the best ever Newcastle goals as well, doesn't he? Against
the outside of the boot one.
Oh yeah, against Everton. There's no way Shearer's getting the Newcastle goal record without the amount of goals Solano assisted for Shearer during the Sir Bobby years. Is go back and watch. It's unbelievable. Definitely worth mentioning. Sorry, go on.
I suppose that's the funny one with Solano, because he's actually very good at football.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of cult heroes are kind of not the best at football or not the best of your team sort of thing. Whereas actually Solano was actually a key part of the team. It was just the fact that he was Peruvian and just an absolute character that sort of endeared him a bit more.
Yeah.
But my cult hero might not surprise many people who know me, but I'm going to go Peter Lovenkrands.
What a selection.
I think I think about when I play Football Manager, the thing I want is a good name and just a random country, and Peter Lovenkrands from Denmark, and he just dyes his hair blonde. And he's so good that we signed him twice as well.
What happened there, by the way? Yeah,
we got relegated, and he was released,
agent, wasn't he?
And then because I think they just didn't have a contract for longer than that, and then Chris Hughton sort of was interim manager in the Championship just by chance, because they hadn't really sorted out what was happening with the club, and the only player he was allowed to sign that summer, I think he got in Danny Simpson on loan and got a couple of other loan players, but they re-signed Peter Lovenkrands, so signed him twice, and what a second spell it was, Sims.
But it was just a funny just thinking about that signing thing. It's kind of you seen that Irish bar song when he's like, there was only one bar, it was a mile long. I kind of feel like that with Lovenkrands. Lovenkrands loans has ended. We've signed him on a free. Get in. And it's funny because we don't even sign him his contract expires obviously in June. But we don't sign him until September.
Yeah, it was I think the deadline had already gone.
So
he was a free agent.
It's proper rude,
to come.
So we even kind of wait on that, but what a second spell he ends up kind of having a player that we'd never really expected much from. Andy Carroll's the lead man at this point up front. You even bring in Marlon Harewood, which a lot of people kind of forget about, and he gets probably a bit more game time than he probably should have. But and we've still got Shola Miobi at this point as well, so he kind of comes in as an emergency backup striker, but then ends up being much better than people kind of expect. And if you expected anything from them in the first place, that is. But you then think about, even on his sort of audition, if you will, he breaks Van der Sar's 13 game clean sheet record, doesn't he?
Yeah.
A lot of fortune in it, but someone's still got to score him, and that's kind of typified his play style.
He always pops up in the right place, doesn't he?
Yeah. A lot of his goals, he's just kind of a ball's just been cleared out with absolutely no one. There's just Peter Lovenkrands at the back post for no reason. He's just there and just taps it in.
Like Thomas Muller.
Yeah. because he wasn't particularly fast. He wasn't like they're very skillful. He was just that knack of being in the right place at the right time.
No, I think to be fair, he was quick when he was at Rangers when he was playing for Glasgow Rangers. Like, see, I remember him being like having ridiculous pace stats on Football Manager. So he must have been like quite quick in like his mid-20s. But then Simpson's right. By the time he came to Newcastle, he just seemed to he was just like quite agile and able to finish in and around the box. But he didn't really have a lot else to his game. I think it's fair.
And I always remember like watching him as well because he always did that thing where like you would never really stand on side. You'd be on the last man, but always offside, and then would just be waiting for that like
Bender's
moment
run
where you can just sort of ping back on and come and get the ball sort of thing. So he was kind of like, even though he didn't have his pace, he just decided, well, I'll just start a few more yards up the pitch, and you catch up with me. But then also, like, great song that still gets chanted away days. I went to away day that one to West Brom just before lockdown, one of my last games before lockdown. The Lovenkrands chant still getting cracked out there.
I love it.
And then, like, obviously, I don't know if you've ever seen the tweet as well. One of the greatest tweets of all time for Lovenkrands, where essentially he tweets saying, "My boy's birthday today, best wishes" and stuff like that. And some guy from like Rangers tweets back saying like, "Hopefully grows up and scores loads of goals for Celtic." But when you click on the link, it's just a picture of his dog.
Oh, it's his dog, yeah. I remember
and some
that.
guy's photoshopped the
dog in the Rangers shirt.
Photoshopped it, yeah. I remember that, yeah.
Some guy that goes and photoshops the dog and puts the dog on like Peter Lovenkrands' face scoring a goal, and it's just like it comes up like once a year, and it's just like, what a brilliant tweet that is.
Amazing,
But
brilliant.
I think
I remember that.
30 goals or something like that in the end of his career, which for a free signing, you can't really complain about.
Definitely.
Well, how fondly do you kind of look back on them? Obviously, it was in the Championship, but how fondly as fans do you look back on that? Even though it's obviously in the second tier, but it is a case of you got back to winning ways, didn't you? And I think that the two times that you were down there, you didn't really seem to struggle as such. I think it was kind of not plain sailing as such the second time round, but you ended up coming up without many hitches really. So what was it like for a fan, obviously of a bigger club, to be down there and sort of experience that?
I think maybe because I was younger, I probably quite enjoyed the first time round because it was, like you say, back to winning ways, and we'd never lost a game at home that season. So it was kind of like you go into the matches at St James's Park just kind of like, well, it's just a matter of what the scoreline's going to be rather than are we going to win or lose sort of thing.
The first year was so stress-free, wasn't it? It was like the team was far too good for that division, really. Like, it was a Premier League team.
Yeah.
Like, I think we'd be like Cardiff, like 3-1, 4-1 or something like that, like midway through the season. It was probably billed as a big crunch match sort of thing.
Oh, it was 5-1. Yeah, when they were like fourth in the division, it was sort of built as like a promotion rivals battle on it, and we absolutely trounced them, and then you just thought, we're going up here. Like,
yeah, from there I just felt like, this is plain sailing from here, really. Like, if we're doing that to them. And I was thinking about that Championship squad, and when you're right, Lace, as well, that team's just far too good, because actually when we get promoted, we've only really added Danny Simpson and Mike Williamson to the team, and the rest of the team still plays in the Premier League and will beat Aston Villa 6-0 on the first day.
Yeah,
you still got Joey Barton, Alan Smith.
I was going to say even because
Nolan.
we signed Tiote as well, but I think even like you say, Alan Smith was playing that first game back in the Premier League, or the first few games before we signed Tiote.
Weird to think that.
So
so it was more just like that relegation season was just an explosion rather than the team wasn't good enough. But Lace is right. The second time around in the Championship was a lot tougher, a lot harder grind.
Really tough.
Much more stressful. I think I was never in doubt that we'd get promoted. Huddersfield, did give us a bit of a run for money in the end of the season, but I kind of felt it was kind of between Brighton and Newcastle, and if you want to get promoted, we'd spent £40 million or something like that, which is a decent chunk in the Championship. I know it's
we got a fair bit back, didn't we, off
stuff.
Sissoko and Genie, but yeah.
But then you just kind of think like, we've got to go up as champions, and that added a lot of stress that was actually just more annoying than anything. And maybe again, because I'm a bit older at the time when I was watching it, I do remember just think the quality's just not there. And when you go from watching your Premier League teams week in, week out, and you're watching Burton Albion coming to the St James's Park Stadium, it just wasn't the same.
It just looked really odd to me, like, because you obviously envisaged Newcastle as one of those teams that, is a stock kind of Premier League team. And obviously that ground is a proper, it's like a Champions League ground, isn't it, really? So it was always odd to watch teams like Burton Albion, for example, and Barnsley and teams like that at St James's. It just didn't seem right to me. And I was wondering just what it was like for you as a fan, just seeing that every week, where you're coming up against teams where you don't feel better than them as such because you're down there, but you've got that pedigree where you're looking upwards rather than at the teams around you, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I suppose the one thing about that's really just frustrating about that whole era is just the wasted potential. We've got Rafa Benitez, which is as close as since Bobby Robson we probably got to a world-class manager, and we're just languishing in the Championship, and then we'll get promoted and we won't really get that kind of investment we want to see. And again, we're kind of just languishing in the bottom half of the bottom half of the table. And it's just, when you're watching those teams and stuff, you kind of are just seeing that play out in front of your eyes, this kind of like wasted opportunity that we do have. And in some way that Everton have at the minute, where they've got Carlo Ancelotti there, and they're trying to do as much as they can to get him the resources. Watching that as a Newcastle fan frustrated because I wish we had that kind of backing at the time. But I think the fun thing about the Championship, at least when we were down there, was the atmosphere was just generally positive because of Rafa Benitez. I think when you go into matches, like, there was just a lot of chanting for Rafa Benitez. There was a lot of praise for Rafa Benitez. Again, I don't want to come down as this like God worship thing of Rafa, because I mentioned him quite a bit now, but I think if Rafa hadn't been there, the attitude would have been a lot more sour that season.
Yeah.
If Rafa had left. Especially if Rafa had left at the end of the season.
Yeah,
and then
definitely.
brought in another, I don't know, Nigel Pearson. No disrespect to Nigel Pearson.
Anyone,
but...
yeah. It's like that. He sort of. I mean, this is weird because like the Lovenkrands suggestion has kind of brought it up on it, Simpson. But it's the comparing those two Championship seasons. Just the irony is the first season we were a lot more comfortable. The first time we were a lot more comfortable and we just dominated teams. But the crowds were often like 40,000 at St James's or 45 for some games, which is quite low for us, really. Like compared to what we'd average in a Premier League. And then the second time it was just sellouts all the way. But that was because of Rafa, basically. Like he was the reason alone. Although the season itself was a lot more stressful and a lot more fraught than the first one.
But then you do look back on the Championship and think of some of, annoyingly, a lot of our greatest moments, or some of the best moments I can remember being at a match, not for who you're playing or whatever, but some of them are in the Championship, like thinking that Norwich 4-3 where we're 3-1 down or something like that.
Yeah, great.
5 minutes and
yeah.
three late goals sort of thing, get you to 4-3, and you I wish we could do that in the Premier League, but you do still get those kind of moments.
We had a lot more sort of like there was like a lot more last ditch wins, like sneaking close games in the second time, which in a weird way is more enjoyable than when you're dominating teams sometimes. I think Lovenkrands is definitely a fantastic shout for cult hero, because I mean people like the guests, like I was saying, like the guests we've had on this series so far have kind of interpreted the question in their own way, and that's what we like really as hosts, me and Tom. But it's interesting, someone who's taken it as like, when I think of cult hero, I'd think of someone like Lovenkrands, definitely, who just like from the outside you wouldn't know he was the most loved footballer, but our fans absolutely adored him. Like the time.
I like to say you go to away days and match day pubs and whatnot, and his name's still getting bandied about, and he still gets loads of love on weird stuff, but on social media and stuff like that. He gets a lot of like Newcastle traction. So
definitely.
Yeah, I think he's just one of those players that you do have just that soft spot for, because again, wasn't really expected for anything. Probably not the greatest footballer, not going to be the top scorer, but again, gave his all and scored some, again, important goals, thinking. throughout his time. I don't know, Lacey, who would you go for? Is that
Well, I mean,
the tables a bit?
I've still got to do some thinking because we'll be revealing my selections on the final episode. But in all honesty, mate, I'm not keeping it from you. I haven't. It's proving tough for me. There's a few names I could throw in. I mean, I always think of like. To be fair, he was a bit early for me in terms of me witnessing it firsthand as a supporter. But Tino Asprilla, I always think, is a massive cult figure at Newcastle. Considering he was only there he only really had like 3 proper seasons there. But what the connection he managed to build with the fans in such a short time, even just on his debut alone, I think Tino's always a shout, and it'll be interesting to see if anyone else picks any of that.
Yeah, he's forever going to be immortalised for that hat-trick for Barcelona.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You have a hat-trick against Barcelona, you're always going to be loved by the fan base.
I mean, Marlon Harewood could have scored a hat-trick against Barcelona.
I was going to say, like, any player who scored a winner for us against Sunderland will naturally be in this conversation. So, like, I'm sure Nikos Dabizas, Ryan Taylor, Liam O'Brien, Andy O'Brien, anyone who scores against Sunderland could easily win this category. But no,
start enacting a policy that we have to play an O'Brien, just get them off the street.
I think Lovenkrands is a great shout, and someone it was obviously me and you are the same age, so the two completely absolutely loved him. That spell he was at the club, he really got what we were about in the Championship, I think. So yeah, a great selection. Before you go, we do need to just quickly run through your personal all-time NFC 11. And again, I know I keep saying this, but guests have interpreted this question as well in their own way. Like, some have judged it on players only they've seen. Are you limiting your selection in that way, or are you going for?
I'm going to go players I've seen because I think it would be just unfair. Otherwise,
No, that's fair enough.
You're losing that weight of comparison, aren't you? Saying how good was this player if I've never actually seen them. So I think my team selection is generally going to be from about, I would say, 2006.
Yeah.
It was in 2006. That's always been a Newcastle fan. I've had a season ticket holder since I was 2006.
Yeah.
My first football memories are 2002 World Cup and 2004 Euros. So stick with 2006.
Yeah.
So I mean, do you want me just to kick on?
Yeah, just who have we got in goal then?
Well, there's a lot of nailed on players. So nailed on goal, Shea Given.
Yeah.
Has to be Shea Given. We're still talking today about when are we going to replace Shea Given, and we always compare. You take the yardstick. Is Dubravka as good as Shea Given? And that's just the small man,
top keeper. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. He was the complete goalkeeper.
Brilliant shot stopper.
Yeah. Really agile, commanded the area, all the rest of it. And I don't think you can look and top. I think he's just shy of the top appearance record holder as well.
It's probably Steve Harper. Probably Steve Harper's probably second to him because he had a good little spell, didn't he? In between Shea Given, start and.
To be fair,
I think if I was going to go for number
Harper
two,
was a good number two.
It'd have to be Harper number 2, wouldn't it? I'd imagine.
If Given hadn't played for us and we had some Nat Neds in nets for that time, I'd actually put Dubravka. I think Dubravka is one of the best goalkeepers I've seen in a.
He's the best keeper we've had since Given. I'd agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Given not having any debate on that, he's just the goalkeeper. He's the number one. Going into defence, do you want a formation or do you want me to reveal that as I go?
Yeah, no, go on. Give us your formation now. I'm interested to see what the way you've tactically
I've gone 4-3-3.
Oh, okay.
I've gone 4-3-3.
Yeah.
I think again left back nailed on Jose Enrique.
Yeah.
Just
interesting.
The most complete left back we've had. Good going forward. Good in defence. Decent ball control. I mean, again, it's a shame how it ends for him, where he sort of says he does the big kiss of death of just saying well, I'm too good for you. I want to go and play in Europe, sort of thing, and kind of. But that's kind of like water under the bridge now. It seems like most people seem to love him again, but I mean, at its time, ridiculous player, best left back I've seen in Newcastle. Next to him, again nailed on Colaccini.
Oh, gotta be, yeah.
Gotta be, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He was in the PFA Team of the Year, wasn't he? I think 11-12. I might be wrong, but
I was going to say the interesting thing with your two defensive picks so far, Simps, is that I think both of them, Colaccini and Enrique, would have actually got in the Newcastle team that finished 3rd and 4th under Robson. And they probably wouldn't have been far away from getting in the team that finished 2nd under Kevin Keegan. Like they were that good. They are that good. They were that calibre of player. Colaccini, I mean, was really a Champions League centre half that season. Like when he got in, like you say, Tom, when he got in PFA Player of the Year, he was just playing at unbelievable standards, so consistent.
I think the thing with Colaccini as well, like when he didn't play, you could tell he wasn't playing. Like when he played, the other 3 defenders played better, sort of thing, and that's just like one of those ridiculous traits you get in some just top quality centre backs. Really, only is just that ability to make the rest of the defence better.
Definitely. Who have you got next to him?
Now this is where it gets a bit interesting. I've gone for Federico Fernandez of recent times. Yeah. It's a tough one because I think for the last few years we've not had like standout centre backs. Probably since Colaccini's left, or at least declined. We've not really had standout centre backs, but I think Federico Fernandez has actually been quite the sort of complete player. And thinking about what that partnership looked, how that partnership worked with Colaccini in the past, where him and Williamson were a good complement. Yeah, Fernandez seems like a natural upgrade on that. Basong was kind of an outside shout as well. I remember really liking
good player, wasn't he?
Basong was great, bizarrely, in a relegation season. He was like a really standout player for us, probably the player of the season for us that year.
So I had Basong down, but I think watching Fernandez, I see just a really good centre back in him, in what I call more of a steady defence. We've always had quite a very rock steady defence until probably maybe some games this season, but
he's missed in it at the moment. He's the team bringing up to very recently, but the team misses him. He's been injured recently, and like the team's missed him the past few weeks. You can tell.
I feel like we might have missed some like opportunities at centre back. Chancellor Mbemba and Nyanga and Bia sticks in my mind of players I thought maybe we didn't see the best of. They didn't really adapt to English football that quickly and were just sort of kind of shipped out as a result of that. Maybe if they'd been given a bit more time or better man management, I don't know what the answer might have been, but it feels like there was a better player than actually what we saw in those two. But I can't pick on what might have been, so I'm probably just going to stick with Fernandez and have a very solid Argentinian connection.
Yeah.
Right back.
That's got the FIFA like green connections. Like Newcastle United, Argentina. No one's getting past them. Also, I should say I'm picking Colaccini in his prime. Like we've just been promoted, finishing 5th in the season.
Like again, Tom's PFA Player of the Team of the Year.
Colaccini does like the reverse of his time ending badly, where he kind of just hangs on a bit too long, sort of thing. And he kind of plays out of necessity, to be fair. I don't mean that as a criticism of him. We play him because we need him to, but by that time he's a bit slow. Back, Lacey, you've already touched on it, but Nobby Solano for his second stint. Yeah. Really wanted to get him in the team because I remember watching him when like he's just got the odd games and whatnot and just thinking what a maverick this kid is. But started his career out as the right winger, but I'm going for his second stint when he comes back and Stephen Carr gets injured. And we start playing Solano at right back and ends up being a really steady right back who can still do the tricks and get forward. I don't think there's many other options I would have said for right back. Maybe Debussy.
Good attacking right back, I think, but I'd probably go for Nobby on the just the overall balance of play. I think he was.
Yeah, exactly. And the player I've got in front of him, these two are just going to be assisting for days. But I think so I've got back four: Enrique, Colo, Federico Fernandez, and Solano, and I'm a Spanish speaking defensive line as well. So.
You're very aware of the international connection on this team. So
communications through the roof at the back. They're all going back for they're all going back.
Poor Shay Gibbons gonna have his work cut out here.
Organising that defence.
I
don't know if Shay speaks Spanish. Yeah. Might have to get him on to find out.
It's gonna be like one of those things as well, where like after a good clean sheet, those 4 lads are all off for like a paella or something like that, and Given's just left behind.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't fit in. He's just kicked out.
Him and Steve Harper off for a couple of Guinnesses.
Go on, the Sips. Give us your midfield.
Well, I mean the two sort of holding players of the sort of triangle got going. Cabaye and Tiote.
Yeah, solid.
Nailed on.
Yeah,
it's
I'd
just
agree
not
with
changing.
that. Yeah.
I think them two together, Tiote never had to worry about doing anything overcomplicated. Just smash, win the ball, pass it 3 yards to Cabaye, and he'll do the Hollywood pass.
Yeah.
And Tiote is just one of those players. Like he could have been top 4 easily.
Yeah, he had
and
quality,
he gets linked with a lot of top
yeah.
4. But like that season when we do finish 5th. Like he gets highlight reels just of matches. I think it's that one against Man United where he just completely takes Wayne Rooney out of the game. Really, when we beat them 3-0, it's just some of the world class play that he gets, and it's a shame his career sort of diminishes. I think he had some sort of personal problems and whatnot, but he was for 2 or 3 seasons a world class defensive midfield. I think we had on that handle.
Top draw,
and then Cabaye, we've spoken about Cabaye before, but. You see players who've got that kind of range of passing on them. Speaking from now, John Joe Shelby is one of them. Cabaye does it consistently. He's also got a working brain on him. So one of the worst titles of the ball I've seen. Not in terms of like, he's going to put an ugly challenge in. Just he would just miss the players, or he would just like fall over when he tries to go shoulder to shoulder with them. But he was always trying to get back and always trying to put them off. Like he was always able to bust a gut essentially. And especially in attacking plays, which is why you get so many goals from that sort of edge of the box area. Just a complete attacking midfielder, I'd say, from Cabaye. Or he's played making the midfielder. So those are my 2 little holders. And then ahead of them, it's been a source of debate. I've gone Wijnaldum, but with a heavy heart, because I've kicked out Kevin Nolan for it.
Big Kev.
So, Gino Wijnaldum's my centre attacking midfielder.
I think how good was he in that season? Because obviously it was the relegation year, but was he like the proper standout? Would you say in that side of like
he's the
a
one
player who looked like a Champions League player?
He's the one player from that season that I just regret is losing. Out of everyone who leaves, Sissoko, Townsend, and whatnot, but.
Yeah, definitely, I'd agree with that.
He scores about. He still gets into double figures for goals for us. Yeah. And then his assists are only 3 or 4, but then when you consider that in front of him, you've got CM Luke De Jong who couldn't hit the water if they fell out of the boat.
He's the oddest player I've ever seen. I've watched him for Sevilla a couple of times. I think the Europa League runs they've been on. He's the oddest player I've ever seen in my life.
You didn't really honest to God, for us.
I couldn't tell you what he does really. I mean, he's just like a lump, isn't he? I mean, like he can't move.
Seem De Jong was like the most consistently injured player, and then the one time he did play against Aston Villa, he missed an open goal from like 4 yards out. I mean, I knew at that point I was like, I bet that cost us at the end of the season. And
De Jong used to be weird. Like you would like De Jong would be out with like a leg injury or something, and then you would like check NUFC Twitter one day, and then it'd be like, he's going to be out for another 2 months because he's got a collapsed lung. And
you thought there's no luck for this.
Where's this come from?
Yeah, you did think.
There was one where like Stephen Taylor poked him in the eye or something like that, so he missed like 2 weeks from that, and it's just what
poked him in the eye.
He was one of those. You didn't want him in the coin toss because he'd sprain his thumb. He was one of those players. I mean, Genie, I mean, Tim's basically you've gone for pure. You've been basing players on their ability rather than longevity at Newcastle.
I think
Genie and Kevin Nolan. There's only one winner on that for my mind.
Sentimentally, I'm looking at like Kevin Nolan, and he scores the hat-trick against Sunderland, and he scores a lot of other like big goals and loads of great performances from him. But you just watch players like Gini Wijnaldum, and he's like. Because he's a dribbler, but in a different sense, like Ben Arfa, where he's just more composed about what he's doing. So he's just more clever with his feet. He can still play that like Pearson pass, and like you say, it's just unfortunate that in front of him it's De Jong that's got to finish it.
No, it's a solid.
So I don't want to try and like take away from Nolan that I do love him and look back on his time fondly, but in terms of just the ability, Gini Wijnaldum. And it kind of feels a shame because he's a good player for Liverpool. I do like him when I watch him at Liverpool, but I don't think it's the same, whether or not it's because you stand out more at Newcastle United when you play like that, but it doesn't seem to, the way he played at us doesn't seem to come out with Liverpool. I'm not sure for whatever reason that is.
It's interesting when he plays for the Netherlands as well. He's a completely different style of player, more of a number 10, isn't he?
He's
I think for the Netherlands,
But
that's it, yeah.
That's a strong midfield, Sim. So we'll Toyota, Cabaye, and Gini. That's a formidable triangle in midfield.
Everyone's doing something like it because everyone's doing something different.
It's
winning
nicely
the ball,
balanced. Yeah,
Cabaye just like pinging it 50 yards, and you got Gini just making that surging run forward.
That's lovely. Go on then, run us through your front line to round off your team.
So I've got my front three, and I'm kind of going to do the classic, like no one plays in any particular position.
Free roll.
Goes without saying that we're going to have Ben Arfa.
Yeah.
I've got him on the right, but like I say, play with whoever. Ben Arfa, he's just going to be skinning people for days. Left backs on toast. We'll be coming for Ben Arfa. We've talked about him. Up front, again, Shearer.
Straightforward.
Ben Arfa, Lano, Enrique, and Wijnaldum.
He's getting goals. Shearer's getting goals.
He's getting goals. Yeah. Scoring 500 goals, let alone. Like that's You don't need to say any more about Shearer. Like I say, we've talked about him enough in the starter there, but Shearer's my striker. Left mid, I think it's a position that could be reserved for St. Maximum in time. Needs to develop and become more consistent, but for the purpose of this, and again, who I'd want, I've gone Obafemi Martins.
That's a shout.
I think it's probably the boldest, which is probably the boldest call.
That's a very bold call. I'm only thinking of like Lon Robert and
Robert. I love
again. Robert's kind of the one where I was like, do I really remember him? If I say like I put him in, I'm just kind of like half chancing it. But Martins, I think just why I would have picked him. I remember when we first started going to the games and whatnot, and it's kind of that era where Kevin Keegan comes back. Yeah. And he revolutionises a bit and puts us in that 4-3-3 where we've got Martins, Viduka, and Owen as the front three. But Martins was just an explosive player, and you might get absolutely nothing from him one game, then all of a sudden the next game he's scoring a hat trick of like 50-yard volleys, and it's just really dynamic, explosive pace, and one of the hardest shots you'll see in football. So I'm probably not looking at him to do like so much wing play. I've got him on the left, but he's probably going to be that sort of explosive late runner.
I always felt
volley any.
I always liked him, Simps, with a sort of like I loved it when he was up front with Sobieski in the Glen Roeder team. Glen Roeder, who sadly passed away just this weekend actually, and I think that was like I really liked him alongside a sort of target man, physical striker. I always felt if he played up front with Owen, like I agree with you, Keegan did sort of put them in that nice triangle shape, and they had a good run at the end of that season. But I always liked Martins with like a target man or just a physical striker who could be a presence in the air. And I think him up front with Shearer in your team, that would be a strange but like probably quite prolific combination actually.
I think I've got like Martins on the scraps. Like the ball kind of like if someone manages to like clear a ball, then you've got Martins just on the volley to like go, and then he'll probably go home and celebrate his 18th birthday or something like that. Always change.
PES 6 Obafemi Martins, the Inter Milan version.
Yeah,
I think in that year, to be fair, I think the first year, like you say, with the Keegan year, the back end of that year, I think he was almost like unplayable, wasn't he, in that front three?
Yeah.
He scored.
It's not a bad shout actually. Yeah.
And he scores that goal against Tottenham, doesn't he? Where he, like he probably like leaps off the ground and just like Tony Yeboah sort of style, just like scissor kicks it.
Yeah.
And it's like so good that it made Mike Ashley down a pint like in the away end.
Was that game? Yeah. I remember watching that.
Yeah. I think it was Tottenham away, wasn't it?
He ran. That was when Keegan had sort of them working nicely as a unit, and they ran right, didn't they? He scored another good goal at White Hart Lane, where it was one of the fastest shots ever, wasn't it, in the Premier League? I think that was like 68k an hour or something.
I mean,
was that in the maroon kit?
Yeah,
Trying to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that was Glenn Roeder's
it was a good game that.
team
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
As
No,
well,
that's-
like I kind of want to say as well, like I kind of feel not bad, but like, or not that it's a shame, but it's a shame that Shearer's Shearer, and he's just such a dominant figure, because there's some players that even up front you'd like want to mention, like Demba Ba was such a like absurd striker for us to have. Like signed him on a free from West Ham or Schalke or wherever it was we actually ended up getting him from, and he was just a goal machine. Papi Cisse for his 6 months, where it's just anything he touches is a goal. Even Luke Remy, I thought was just a really consistent striker. Really consistent. Like, I mean, probably wouldn't have him in a greatest 11 team, nowhere near it. But I think it's a shame that we always just say like, oh, it's just Shearer, because you kind of forget that actually we've got like a steady production line of strikers. I mean, even I'll take back Remy because I'll say Salman Rondon.
Yeah.
He was such
Great
an
player,
instrumental figure in that Rafa Benitez lineup, where
a proper Rafa striker as well. Proper Rafa
he may not
striker.
have the goals
Rondon.
to back up a top striker candidate or anything like that, but his hold-up play and his work ethic brought so many goals for both Perez and in that season, I felt.
Exactly, yeah. No, definitely. Since I think you've had some great mentions there, mate, and that's my 11. It's a modern 11, but it's a strong 11 nonetheless, and it actually shows that, you know, while we've had sort of, for the majority of the time I've supported Newcastle and the time you've supported Newcastle, we've had some tough years. You know, the majority of it's been quite difficult, but we have had some good players in those years as well. And I was
thinking the only player for you from now, I know I've got Fernandes in there. But again, just when you're talking about, I think when Tom was talking before about, like, you know, consistency for 5 years and whatnot, Hatem was the only one that was ever on my mind for potentially getting in there. Theory was just an unbeatable candidate, but like Hatem as well, as Tom says, for 5 years, I think it's just been one of the most reliable centre mids we've had in a long time.
I agree with that.
Reliable in a consistent sense. You know, he's not doing the Hollywood passes that your Shelby might do or something like that for us, but
he's another one I've got to think about for my
hard
cult
work
hero. He's definitely a player that I absolutely he really resonates with me, the way he plays. Like, I just love his style, the way he still like gets stuck in for challenges, and
and even if he's having a bad game and things aren't, things aren't coming from, you can still see him trying. You know, it's not
exactly.
He has a bad game and he gives up at 60 minutes and just walks around the pitch. He's still going for it. So. Yeah, I kind of want to just give like a slight little mention of Hatem in that sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, Martin's on the left, and maybe in time it might be Alan Saint-Maximin. Again, I think we're seeing him playing in that. He's just really unpredictable, dynamic, and I think it just more depends on can he be a bit more consistent, and probably start being a bit more productive.
Yeah.
Can he turn games on their heads like Ben Arfa could? I think that's the sort of measure.
I'm only quite glad you've not picked him, because I dread to think how little defending a team containing Ben Arfa and Saint-Maximin and they would be so exposed by a pair of counter-attacking fullbacks. It's unbelievable. But no, I really appreciate that your selections tonight, Simpson. They've been superb. Just to recap,
Thank you.
You've gone Alan Shearer as your greatest Newcastle player, albeit with a big sort of nomination, honourable mention for Hatem Ben Arfa. You've gone Peter Lovenkrands as your cult hero, and then a greatest 11 of Shay Given, Jose Enrique, Fabrizio Colocini, Federico Fernandez, Nobby Solano, Johan Cabai, Czech Tiote, and Gini Wijnaldum in midfield, and then a front three of Hatem Ben Arfa, Obafemi Martins, and the great Alan Shearer up front, which is a team that I think we can both be proud of, Simps.
Yeah, I think that's it's a very explosive team.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just glad you didn't get any names wrong, like Joe Kinnear then. I was getting a bit worried at one stage when we went...
Johan Kebab and Charles Insomnia.
I know.
There's that great story about Kinnear. We had a player called Shane Ferguson out on loan at Millwall, and about 2 weeks into his role as this director of football, he comes bursting into the scouting meeting saying, I've just seen this player called Shane Ferguson at Millwall that we have to sign. It's like,
When he playing for you, yeah? He was already playing for you, wasn't he?
He was on loan.
Tom, there's no one I'd least rather be compared to in football than Joe Kinnear.
I hope you can forgive me, Lacey, yeah.
We'll have to talk it. We'll have to talk it through.
Have to talk it over. I think. Yeah.
No.
On the review.
I think that's...
I'm happy that team's been locked in because it's been on my mind for ages trying to set that team and stuff.
I know it's given you've been texting. It's given you some food for thought over the past few days, hasn't it? So yeah, no.
I'd love to see that team play.
It'd be interesting. I
think it's a good side.
It's not a bad side, you know. It would be a lot of them would be close to getting in, like the teams that we've had that finished, like I say, in the top 4 and pushed for title challenges in the past. Our best teams in the past 30 years. So yeah, Simps. Thank you. I think that's a fitting way to round off this episode. Brief mention of joking here. I knew we'd get him in the Newcastle episode. But no, thanks for joining us, Simps. Great to have you on, mate. And Tom, I'll see you on the next dive into our Newcastle mini-series.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely given us a lot of insight, like you say, into sort of the younger fan perspective. And definitely gives us a lot to think about, I think, for the review as well, which is always good. Yeah. So thanks for coming on, Jack, and hopefully at some point we'll see you as well for another episode or whenever you fancy coming back on, obviously.
Yeah. Definitely. No, enjoyed my time there talking about Newcastle.
No worries.
Probably gonna have a few more grey hairs for thinking about it.
Cheers, Sims.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you.